Hello everyone, my name is Ella Weitzel and today I'm going to tell you a story that changed my life forever. You know that feeling when you're in the biggest moment of your life, being recognized by the President of the United States himself, and your family is there in the front row pretending they've always supported you? Well, let me tell you exactly what happened that day at the White House and how I got there. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from because this story is going to be long and I want you to stay with me until the end. I promise you'll understand why my family was left speechless when I told the whole truth in front of the television cameras. My story begins in Cedar Falls, Iowa, a small town where everyone knows everyone. I grew up in an upper-middle-class family. My father, Robert Weitzel, was an accountant for an insurance company and my mother, Patricia, worked as a nursing supervisor at the local hospital. We had a beautiful house with a big yard, a two-car garage, and from the outside we looked like the perfect American family. But on the inside things were very different. My parents had a very specific vision of what success meant. To them, success meant getting a college degree, getting a job in an office, marrying someone from a good family, having kids and following the traditional path. Anything outside of that script was considered failure. I have two older brothers. Marcus, who is an orthopedic doctor, and David, who is a corporate lawyer. They have always been the golden children of the family. When I was a kid, I heard constantly, Marcus got the best grades in his class, David got accepted to Harvard, Marcus bought a $500,000 house, David married Judge Thompson's daughter. Me. I was always the odd one out. Ever since I was little, I was more independent, more adventurous. While my brothers were playing board games, I was climbing trees and building forts in the backyard. When they were studying to be at the top of their class, I was learning martial arts and practicing target practice with my grandfather. My grandfather, Thomas Weitzel, was a Vietnam War veteran. He would tell me stories about serving his country, about honor, courage, and sacrifice. He would tell me that serving in the military was one of the noblest things anyone could do. These conversations planted a seed in me that would grow over time. That all changed when I was 17, my senior year of high school. It was a Sunday night. We were all having dinner with our family when I finally got the courage to tell them my plans for after graduation. I remember exactly how it happened. My mom was serving the roast beef and asked, "Ella, have you decided what college you're going to do yet? Your grades are good enough to get into Iowa State." I took a deep breath and said, "Actually, Mom, Dad, I'm not going to college right away. I want to join the Army." The silence that followed was deafening. My dad stopped mid-fork, my mom dropped her plate with a loud clatter on the table. Marcus and David looked at each other as if I'd just said I wanted to become an alien. My father was the first to react. He slammed his fist on the table and yelled, "Have you lost your mind, Ella? We didn't raise you to be a little soldier. The Army is for people who have no other options, not for children from educated families." My mother started crying. She said, "Ella, child, you could die. You could get hurt. Why would you want to throw your life away like that? We can pay for college, you can have a real career." I tried to explain. I talked about serving my country, about honor, about wanting to make a difference. I told them how my grandfather inspired me and how I felt that was my purpose. But they wouldn't listen. David, ever the lawyer, started listing statistics about war injuries and veterans with psychological problems. Marcus talked about how I was wasting my intellectual potential. My parents alternated between yelling at me and begging me to reconsider. The argument went on for hours. In the end, my father said something I'll never forget. "If you do this stupid thing, Ella, don't count on us. We will not support this foolish decision. You will regret it for the rest of your life, and don't come crying to us when you find out you made the biggest mistake of your life." My mother added, "I didn't raise a daughter to be a second-class soldier. I raised a daughter to be someone important in life. You are wasting everything we gave you." That night I went to my room and cried until I had no more tears. But deep down I knew I was making the right decision. My heart was telling me to follow this path, even if it meant losing the support of my family. In the months leading up to graduation, the tension at home was unbearable. My parents barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was to try to convince me to change my mind. They even made an appointment with a psychologist, thinking I was having some kind of teenage crisis. The psychologist, Dr. Harrison, was actually the one who helped me better understand my own feelings. He told me, "Ella, it's normal for families to have different views on the future. The important thing is that you are following your own values and not the expectations of others." This made me even more certain of my decision. During this time, the only support I had was from my grandfather Thomas. He would call me every week and say, "Girl, you have courage. Serving your country is the most honorable thing anyone can do. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." But my grandfather lived in another state and I felt very alone. At school, my friends didn't understand either. Most of them were focused on graduation parties and college plans. When I told them I was going to enlist, they would look at me like they didn't know what to say. There was one particularly difficult moment 3 weeks before graduation. I was in the kitchen eating breakfast when my mother sat down across from me. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. She said, "Ella, I haven't slept well in months thinking about this decision of yours. I keep imagining you somewhere dangerous, far from home without our protection. Please reconsider. You can do ROTC in college if you want something in the military. But you don't have to enlist completely." I held her hand and said, "Mom, I understand your concern. But I have to do this. This isn't just a phase or a rebellion. This is something I feel I need to do with my life." She pulled her hand away and said, "So you chose the army over your family. I hope you're happy with that choice." These words hurt so much. I never wanted it to be a choice between the army and my family. I wanted to have both. Graduating from high school was one of the most bittersweet days of my life. While all the other families were celebrating, cheering, taking proud pictures, my parents were there just out of obligation. They greeted my teachers, smiled for the pictures, but I felt like it was all superficial. After the ceremony, there was a party at our house. Relatives, neighbors, family, friends. Whenever anyone asked about my future plans, my parents would change the subject or give vague answers. I heard my mother say to my aunt, "Ella is still deciding. You know how young people are, always changing their minds." This really pissed me off. I wasn't changing my mind. I had already enlisted and was going to start basic training in 2 months. That night, after everyone had left, my father called me to talk. He said, "Ella, this is your last chance to back out. I've already spoken to the president of Iowa State. They might still accept your application for the fall semester. You can have a normal life like your brothers." I looked at him and said, "Dad, this is my normal life. This is the life I have chosen. I hope that one day you will understand and support me." He shook his head and said, "Ella, you are a smart young woman who is making a stupid mistake. When you return from your little military adventure, we will be here to clean up the mess you have made of your life." Those words echoed in my head for a long time. 2 weeks later, it was time to leave for Fort Moore, Georgia for basic training. My parents offered to drive me to the airport, but the ride was made in almost complete silence. At the airport, my mother hugged me and whispered, "Please be careful. Despite everything, I love you." My father gave me a formal handshake and said, "Good luck, Ella. I hope you find what you are looking for." I knew they loved me, but I also knew they did not approve of my choice. That made saying goodbye all the more difficult. Basic training was the most challenging thing I had ever done. Wake-ups at 5 a.m., intense physical exercises, combat training, strict military discipline. In the early days, I questioned my decision many times. I was exhausted, sore, and homesick. But I wasn't alone. All the recruits were struggling. I made friends with some amazing people. Maria Rodriguez from El Paso, who had enlisted to pay for college. Jake Thompson from Detroit, who came from a military family. Sarah Chin from San Francisco, who wanted to become a military engineer. We supported each other. When I was having doubts, they reminded me why I was there. When they were discouraged, I did the same for them. Our drill sergeant, Sergeant First Class Williams, was tough but fair. He saw potential in me and challenged me constantly. He would say, "Weitzel, you have natural leadership. Don't waste that." During training, I would call home once a week. The conversations were always tense and superficial. My parents would ask if I was okay, if I was eating right, if I wasn't getting hurt. But they never asked about my progress, what I was learning, how I was growing as a person. On one of those calls, I tried to tell her about an important accomplishment. I had been selected to lead my platoon in a combat training exercise. I said, "Mom, I was selected as platoon leader today." The sergeant said I had the potential to be an excellent soldier. Her response was, "That's great, honey. I hope you're wearing sunscreen. The Georgia sun is very strong." This frustrated me. I was sharing something important, something that meant a lot to me, and she was worried about sunscreen. But I kept going. I graduated from basic training at the top of my class. I went on to Military Intelligence Specialist School at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. There I discovered that I had a natural aptitude for data analysis and intelligence operations. My instructor, Major Patricia Stone, took me aside for a private meeting. She said, "Private Weitzel, you have an exceptional analytical mind. Have you considered applying for officer training?" I hadn't thought about it before, but the idea excited me. Being an officer would mean more responsibility, more leadership, more opportunities to really make a difference. When I told my family about this on a phone call, their reaction was mixed. My dad said, "Well, at least being an officer is better than being a private. But it's still not a real career." My mom added, "Ella, why don't you consider using this military experience to get a job in corporate security when you get out of the Army? It would be a natural transition." They still didn't understand that I wasn't doing this as a temporary stopover. I was building a military career. I applied to officer school and was accepted. During my 2 years of training, I excelled in tactics, leadership, and intelligence operations. I made lifelong friendships and learned the true meaning of serving something bigger than myself. But most importantly, I found my calling. I was good at it. I was a natural leader, I had keen tactical instincts, and I genuinely loved serving my country. During this time, contact with my family became increasingly sporadic. They would call on my birthday, at Christmas, at Thanksgiving. But the conversations were always superficial. They would ask me when I was coming home, when I was getting out of the Army, when I was going to start a real family. They never asked me about my accomplishments, my career progression, the people I was leading, or the missions I was serving. My brothers kept their distance too. Marcus was busy with his medical practice and his family. David was focused on his career as a lawyer. On the rare occasions when we did speak, they were polite but distant. I remember a conversation with David where he said, "Ella, don't you think you've proven yourself? You've shown that you're independent and courageous. Now wouldn't you like to go home and use your experience for something more traditional?" I replied, "David, I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. I'm doing what I love. I'm serving my country and leading incredible soldiers. Why can't you understand that this is my real life, not a phase?" He was silent for a moment and then said, "Because we know you, Ella. You've always been ambitious. You can do so much more with your life than be a soldier." That conversation showed me that my family still didn't understand who I had become. To them, I was still the rebellious 18-year-old girl who was going through a phase. After graduating as an officer, I was deployed to Afghanistan. It was 2018 and I was going to lead a military intelligence unit in one of the most challenging regions of the country. When I told my family about this, their reaction was panic. My mom cried on the phone and said, "Ella, you can't go there. It's too dangerous. You could die." My dad was equally worried, but he was also angry. He said, "Ella, this has gone on long enough. You don't have to go to a war zone to prove you're a good soldier. Ask for a transfer to a base in the United States." I tried to explain that this was an incredible opportunity. I was going to lead real soldiers on a real mission, making a difference in the lives of real people. But all they saw was danger. That night, I got a call from my grandpa Thomas. He said, "Girl, I heard about your deployment. I want you to know that I've never been more proud of you. You're going to do an amazing job out there. Trust your training and take care of your soldiers." That conversation meant a lot to me. At least one person in my family understood what I was doing. The deployment to Afghanistan was challenging in every way possible. I was leading a team of 15 soldiers responsible for collecting and analyzing intelligence for combat operations. We worked long hours in difficult conditions, always aware of the dangers around us. But I loved the job. I was making a real difference. The information my team collected helped save the lives of American soldiers and Afghan civilians. I was leading incredible people and learning every day. 3 months after my arrival, we were given a critical mission. There was intelligence about a terrorist leader who was planning an attack on a school in Kabul. My team was tasked with locating and confirming the information. This was the most important work I had ever done. We spent 2 weeks analyzing data, coordinating with other units, and checking and rechecking our information. In the end, we were able to locate the target and provide accurate information that allowed the special forces to capture him before he could carry out the attack. This operation saved hundreds of innocent children's lives. When we learned that the mission was successful, my entire team celebrated. We knew we had done something truly important. My commander, Colonel James Mitchell, called me in for a meeting. He said, "Lieutenant Weitzel, the work you and your team did was exceptional. You saved lives and accomplished the mission with the utmost precision. I am going to recommend you for a decoration. I wasn't expecting this. I was just doing my job. But apparently I had done something special. A few weeks later, I received word that I had been recommended for the Bronze Star Medal, one of the highest U.S. military awards. This medal is given to soldiers who demonstrate heroism, meritorious achievement, or meritorious service in a combat zone. When I called to tell my family, their reaction was complicated. My mother said, "That's wonderful, daughter, but I still want you to be safe here at home." My father said, "Congratulations, Ella. That's a major military achievement, right?" I could tell they didn't understand the magnitude of what had happened. The Bronze Star is one of the highest honors a soldier can receive. But to them it was just another military thing I was doing. My brothers were more direct. Marcus said, "That's impressive, Ella, but are you still planning on coming home at some point?" David added, "You've already proven yourself to be a good soldier. Maybe it's time to think about what comes next." Even though I had received one of the highest military honors, my family was still waiting for me to get out of the army and come home. 6 months later, I got a call that changed everything. It was from the Pentagon office. They told me that I had been selected to receive the Bronze Star Medal in a special ceremony at the White House, from the president himself. I couldn't believe it. Thousands of soldiers receive awards, but only a select few are selected for presidential ceremonies. This meant that my operation had been recognized at the highest level of government. When I told my family, this time the reaction was different. Suddenly, everyone was interested. My mother said, "The White House? The president? Ella, is this going to be televised?" My father asked, "How many people are going to be watching? Is this going to be on national news?" My brothers were suddenly proud. Marcus said, "Wow, Ella, this is amazing. Can you invite us to the ceremony?" David added, "I can take a few days off from the office. This is an incredible opportunity." I realized that for the first time in almost 10 years, my family was genuinely interested in what I was doing. But it wasn't because they finally understood the value of my military service. It was because now there was public recognition, social prestige, something they could be proud of in front of others. I invited my family to the ceremony, but it left me with a bittersweet feeling. Where were they when I needed support? Where were they when I was struggling in basic training? Where were they when I was in Afghanistan risking my life? Now that there was a presidential ceremony and media coverage, suddenly I was worthy of their pride. The week of the ceremony was interesting. My family arrived in Washington, D.C. 2 days before the event. They were excited, taking pictures of everything, posting on social media about how proud they were of their military daughter. We had dinner together the night before the ceremony. For the first time in years, my family seemed genuinely interested in hearing about my career. They asked questions about my unit, about my missions, about my future plans. But I noticed something. All of the questions were about things they could tell other people. They wanted to know details that would sound impressive in social conversation. My mother said, "Ella, can you tell us about the mission that earned you this medal? I want to be able to explain to my friends at work what you did." My father asked, "How many people will be at the ceremony? Will there be important journalists there?" Marcus wanted to know, "Will you be on the national news? Can I record it to show my colleagues at the hospital?" David was interested in, "Will you be meeting other important people besides the president? Senators, generals?" I answered their questions, but with a growing sense of unease. They were interested in the glamour, the prestige, the opportunity to associate themselves with my success. But where was that interest when I really needed them? On the day of the ceremony, I was nervous but confident. I felt proud of what I had accomplished, but also sad that it had taken so long for my family to recognize my worth. The ceremony was beautiful. There were about 50 people in the Oval Office. Other soldiers being decorated, their families, high-ranking military officials, and a few members of the media. When it was my turn, the president called me forward. He said, "Lieutenant Ella Weitzel demonstrated exceptional courage and exemplary leadership in an operation that saved hundreds of innocent lives. Your service represents the best of American values and our commitment to justice and peace." He placed the medal on my chest and saluted me. In that moment, I felt on top of the world. I had accomplished something that few soldiers can. I had served my country with distinction and been recognized at the highest level. After the ceremony, there was a photo op and interviews with the media. That's when everything changed. A CNN reporter asked me, "Lieutenant Weitzel, How did your family react when you decided to pursue a career in the military? I looked at my family who were standing nearby, smiling and posing for pictures. My mother waved at me. My father gave me a thumbs up. My brothers were clearly proud to be associated with me at this moment. And then I had an epiphany. I realized that if I gave a diplomatic answer, if I pretended that they had always supported me, I would be lying not only to the reporter but to myself. I would be allowing them to rewrite history. So I decided to tell the truth. I looked directly into the camera and said, that's an interesting question. When I was 17 and told my family that I wanted to join the army, my father told me that I was throwing my life away. My mother told me that I was wasting everything they had given me. They told me that the army was for people who had no other options. I could see my family getting uncomfortable, but I kept going. Throughout my training, during my officer education, during my deployment to Afghanistan, they constantly asked me when I was going to come home and start a real career. When I told them that I had saved hundreds of lives in an intelligence operation, they asked when I was going to leave the army. The journalist was clearly interested and asked, "And how do you feel about that now?" I looked at my family again. They were visibly embarrassed, but I continued. I feel proud of what I achieved despite the lack of support. I feel proud that I followed my calling even when the most important people in my life thought I was making a mistake. And I hope my story inspires other young people to follow their dreams, even when their family doesn't understand. I paused for a moment and then added, I love my family. I know they love me. But their support came only when there was public recognition and social prestige involved. The real support should have come when I was fighting, when I was growing up, when I was building my career. After that interview, the rest of the day was tense. My family was clearly upset, but they couldn't make a scene in public. They smiled for more photos, greeted others, but I could see the anger in their eyes. That night at the hotel, we finally had the conversation we had needed to have for years. My father said, Ella, you humiliated us on national television. How could you do this to us? My mother was crying. We came here to support you and you attacked us publicly. I took a deep breath and said, I didn't attack you. I told you the truth. You're here now because it's convenient, because it's prestigious, because you can boast in front of others. But where were you when I really needed you? Marcus tried to defend his parents. Ella, we were worried about you. We wanted you to have a safe and stable life. I replied, Marcus, worry is not the same thing as support. Support would be trying to understand my choice, encouraging me, asking about my progress and accomplishments. Worrying is waiting for me to give up. David said, we didn't know how to support something we didn't understand. And that's when I had the most honest conversation of my life with my family. I said, you don't have to completely understand to support me. You just have to trust me. You just have to believe that I know what I'm doing with my life. My mom asked, how can we best support you going forward? I thought for a moment and then said, start by asking about my job like you would ask about Marcus or David's job. Stop assuming I'm going to leave the army. Recognize that this is my career, not a phase. And when I tell you about my accomplishments, celebrate with me. Don't ask me when I'm going to come home. That conversation didn't solve everything instantly. Relationships take time to heal. But it was the first real step toward a healthier family dynamic. In the months following that conversation, things gradually began to change. My family began to ask different questions when we spoke on the phone. Instead of asking when I was going to be home, they asked about my soldiers, my training, my responsibilities. My mother began reading articles about the army to better understand my world. She sent me newspaper clippings about military veterans and soldier support programs. My father began telling his friends about my military accomplishments. He learned to explain what it meant to be an intelligence officer and why the Bronze Star was important. Marcus and David began to include me in conversations about careers and professional achievements. They stopped assuming that my work was less important than theirs. Most importantly, they began to ask me about my future plans in the army, not about my plans to leave the army. 6 months after the White House ceremony, I was promoted to captain. When I told my family, the reaction was completely different from anything I had experienced before. My mom said, Ella, congratulations. That means you're going to have more soldiers under your command, right? You must be very proud. My dad said, Captain Weitzel sounds great, doesn't she? I'm proud of you, daughter. Marcus said, wow, Ella, you've moved up in rank quickly. That speaks volumes about your competence as a leader. David added, I'd like to hear more about your new responsibilities. It sounds fascinating. These reactions showed me that my family was finally trying to understand and support my path. I am currently a major in the United States Army. I lead a unit of 200 soldiers and am stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I specialize in intelligence and counterterrorism operations. My family and I have a much better relationship now. It's not perfect. There are still moments of tension and misunderstanding. But there is mutual respect and genuine support. My mom visits my military base twice a year. She knows some of my soldiers and is always impressed with the quality of the people I work with. My father keeps a photo album of my military accomplishments. He shows it to anyone who shows interest. Marcus and David include me in family conversations about professional accomplishments. They treat me as an equal, not as the younger sister who is going through a phase. Most importantly, they ask me about my long-term military career plans. They know that I plan to eventually become a colonel and that I have specific plans for my career progression. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing about my journey. Yes, it was hard not to have the support of my family in the early years. Yes, it was painful to feel like I had to choose between my calling and my family. But that struggle made me stronger. It taught me to trust myself, to pursue my goals even when others didn't understand, and to find my own definition of success. I also learned that sometimes the people who love us need time to understand who we really are. My family loved me, but they had a fixed image of who I should be. It took time for them to adjust that image to the reality of who I really am. The White House interview was a turning point. Telling the truth publicly was risky but necessary. It forced my family to confront the reality of how they treated me and gave me the opportunity to explain how I felt. Today I serve my country with pride. I lead incredible soldiers who trust me to make decisions that can save their lives. I contribute to America's national security. I make a difference in the world. And now, for the first time, I have the support of my family as I do this. To anyone watching who is going through a similar situation, I want to say, trust yourself. You know your own heart better than anyone else. If you have a calling, a passion, a dream that drives you, pursue it. Even if the people around you don't understand. It may be hard at first. It may be lonely. It may feel like you're choosing between your dreams and your family. But if you're consistent, if you prove through your actions that you know what you're doing, eventually the people who truly love you will understand and support you. And if they don't, well, you'll still have a life worth living, a life that is truly yours. Thank you for sticking with me through this whole story. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, have you ever been through something similar? How did you deal with the lack of family support regarding your dreams? I read all the comments and love hearing your stories. Until next time.